Hi again. This video is to go over Beastmaster for my Equinox Guild members. So BM is a support spec. There's really two main specs that there are, BM48 and BM58. 58 is pretty much ran when you don't use a Archon, and 48 is pretty much ran when you still have an Archon. 48 has a little bit more DPS over 58, but it's not missing some defensive stuff and some other helpful things. Either way, both specs has no debuffs, so either the Bard has to do all three, or Archon do the normal two and the Bard does the normal one. Main thing though that you're getting is that Enrage is another raid buff that you will get that does, there's nothing else that overwrites it. It's a little bit of a bleed on your target that you use, so you do have to have a target be within 20-meter range. But what it does is party raid member damage by 5%, critical hit chance by 5%, and critical hit power by 10%. And that also increases your pets' same things by some different values. So that means people that have 40% CP, they now have 50% CP for the duration of the buff, which lasts for 10 seconds. If you have, a 30% crit chance, you'll end up having 35% crit chance, and your damage will be up as well. So as you can see, it is a little bit of a boost. The thing though that a lot of people use it for is that you end up with some different combat buffs. As said, Enrage is a big one. Command to attack is Flaring Power. So, Flaring Power is Flaring Power. This one does not need you to have any I forget what the mage thing is called that they use for some of their spells. But sometimes with heavy specs, sometimes like Harbcon normally never starved for that resource, but Pyrocon, if they die, they normally don't build up charge. That's the word I was looking for. Charge fast enough that they had to have enough charge to use Flaring Power. Beastmasters, they don't have any charge. All they have to do is blow it, and it works. The other two things that Beastmasters have, though, is Command to Recover, increasing healing on all raid members, and Command to Stand Ground, which increases your max health, armor, and resistances for 30 seconds. The other thing is Beastmaster does get a few buffs. Some are very similar to the Rogue ones or the Archon ones. So we have Bond of Clarity, increases movement speed. Same thing as, I believe, Spark Shower for Archon, or with the Bard, you may know their movement fervor instead. Bond of Power, increasing Strength, Dex, Intelligence, and Wisdom by 85. This one, I believe, shares with the Archon aura. Again, it does not debuff the Warrior, where the Archon aura debuffs the Archon, plus as well, after 5 minutes, the Archon has to refresh the auras, where Beastmaster just stays toggled on. Bond of Shelter, increasing the armor and resists. This is the same thing as the Oracle or Bard's Anthem, whatever the Oracle versions are called, that increases armor and resist. Normally the Bard or Oracle doesn't run that. It's normally either running the energy reduction if there's no Chloro, or they're running the move speed. Really with this, like, you don't need a Chloro for living energy, because the Bard could run that and the Beastmaster run these other two. Other thing though is Call of Savagery, increases damage by 5%. On all raid members after a successful finisher. Call of Kinship restores health over 36 seconds after a successful finisher. It's a small heal as well. Um, you have a fast summon, of course, like most pet classes. Spotter's Call is the same thing as the Archon's Illuminate or the Bard Oracle's Code of Jeopardy Corroded Defense. Of course, it's lasts 30 seconds, so you normally want the Bard or Oracle to do theirs instead of use yours. The other thing, though, is they have their own debuff that increases damage that they do to their target that has some messy wounds on it. It is a pet class, so you want to have your greater companion out. If it dies, you lose a bit of damage, actually a fair chunk of damage, to be honest. Other than that, it has your builders and your finishers. We'll get into macros there. 58 BM has a little bit more, so just there's a heal that you can use that heals yourself, of course, but it's more powerful with the more damage over time spells you have. Get Primal Lucidity, which reduces cast time by 3% on all party or raid members. This helps with a lot of casters in the group. Pyros love it. This is why pretty much with an Archon, sometimes you'll end up having this type of thing with an Archon, so with 58 BM you can not run an Archon. The only thing is you don't have the debuffs, which the Bard or Oracle then will have to pick up. The other thing, though, is you pick up Call of Blood, Call of Force, and Call of Stone. Call of Blood is increasing critical hit chance by 5% after each finisher for 30 seconds, so, 3 combo points of finisher, that's up all the time. Call of Stone actually reduces incoming damage by 5%. And then there's Call of Force, which reduces cast time and auto attack delay by 7% on all party or raid members for 30 seconds after a successful finisher. So, Primal Lucidity is a 10-second cooldown, lasts for 6 seconds though for that 3%, so you almost have a full 10% cast time, auto attack delay for almost 100% of the time. Also, you do end up with a control type thing. You can put an enemy to sleep. Not that useful in raids, though. Really, the macros end up being a little bit different because of the spec. A little bit more points put in. So just go over the 58 is 0 Reaver. What this allows you to do is get Soul Sickness, which is another dot. 18 in Paragon. We have 5 in Teaching of the 5 Rings. 5 in Weapon Familiarity. 3 in Grace of 5 Rings. Main reason for this is increasing attack power and weapon damage, which is the same as Weapon Familiarity. 3 in Devoted Training, which is increasing your strength, and then 2 in Flowing Strikes, which pretty much just helps increase critical hit chance. So with 58, there's not much that you don't put points in. You missed the 61 point of Fury Unleashed, which is a 30-second thing. Lasts for 15 seconds, which increases your critical hit damage of the warrior and the companion by 1%, damage by 3%, and each damage over time affected on the enemy values it up to 5. Multiplies these values. So each damage over time effect multiplies the values up to 5. But it's not a big of a thing like some other specs where you run 61s, and since it's an Archon spec, it's kind of more of a hybrid. So points that you don't put in is, starting up top, you do not put points in Guardianship, which then means that you don't put a point in Tutelage. All that is another ability that does a group heal. You do not put points, 1 out of 2 points in Primal Bond, which is heals done to you heals your Primal Companion. So really that's the 3 points that you don't put in. 58 plus 3, that's 61, so just Guardianship, which means that tutelage, and then just not 1 point in Primal Bond. The other thing is that Resonating Strikes, Physiology Proficiency, Energy Reserves, Precision Strikes, again this is big because you definitely want your bleeds and damage over times to last longer. And then Power Manipulation normally as well. So the difference between that and, as I said, the 48 the same masteries, 0 Reaver again. This is 28 Paragon instead of the 18, of course. So just start with Paragon again. 5 points in Teaching of the Five Rings, 4 points in Combat Precision, 5 points in Weapon Familiarity, 5 points in Devoted Training, 3 points in the Grace of the Five Rings, 3 points in Flowing Strikes, which then unlocks 2 points in Improved Flowing Strikes, and then 1 point in Tranquility. .48 Beastmaster, again, points that you don't put in then is you don't put points in Loyalty. So you have a longer cast time for your pet, of course. You still get your fast summon, but your first summon will take 8 seconds instead of 4 seconds to cast now, but if you have your Primal Call up every 1 minute, you can just fast summon. Don't put points in Calming Influences, so you don't have the CC. You again don't put points in Guardianship, so you don't have the ability that does a small AoE heal. Again, just for more survivability of your pet, they still have the 1 out of 2 points in Primal Bond. You don't put points in Primal Heal, so you don't have your own self-heal. No points in Call of Stone, so you don't have the damage reduction. No points in Razor Sharp Fangs. And 4 out of 5 in Fierce Wounds. Everything else is filled in. So this spec does a little bit more damage. It has some of the main buffs to help with the raid. To be honest, I haven't used 48 really in a raid yet. I think it was mainly used with Gino with running an Archon. Main reasons for that is obviously instead of just stand grounded and cover, you can blow it near the end of the fight to help people live a little bit better, increase that healing, give them a little bit more health. So I'll just kind of showcase 58 BM. I'll go over macros for both though. Main problem is you have a lot of buffs. Oh, and if you are running 58 BM and a Bard and no Archon, you do not have the Archon's Endurance buff. But the thing is all that has to do though is if the Cleric has points in Sentinel, they have their Endurance buff. I also think Warlock with Nedra's Essence or whatever, one of those two could put up their Endurance buff, so you'll get the same amount of Endurance as you would with the Archon. You'll have the Bard Endurance buff, you'll have, normally, it's like a Pure Ascent build that will have a little, that Endurance buff from Sentinel. So of course, you have your little pet. Make sure it's the greater companion pet instead of the lesser. Go over some macros here. Really, I just have the two. 48 BM, Power Manipulation, Messy Wounds, Cutting Ruse, Twin Cuts, Tranquility, Vicious Blow, Fierce Strike, Ravaging Strike, and Vicious Opportunity, and then Flesh Rip. Fierce Strike is your spam ability, but Ravaging, Vicious Opportunity, and Flesh Rip are off GCDs or are procs. Difference with that to the 58 BM is that still have Messy Wounds, Cutting Runes, Twin Cuts. Prime and Lucidity, you throw in Vicious Blow, Fierce Strike, Ravaging Strike, Flesh Rip, and Vicious Opportunity. Just a second, have someone at the door. Sorry for that delay there. So other than the macro, as I said, 58 just has a little bit more in it because of the abilities that you gain. So I do have Spotter's Call, either if I'm, in a PvP match, or to get it up, because the bard normally has to get their combo points, Oracle kind of their other buffs up, so that way their type of version of Spotter's Call lasts for a whole minute instead of 30. So you can normally apply that at the beginning, so that it will have a few seconds before the bard will have benefit. I do have Fierce Strike still on as well by itself. Main reason for this is that Fierce Strike does do a purge with the talents. There is talk on the forums that they'll change the purge with either being an internal cooldown. Hopefully it's not more than 3 seconds, or that could screw us on fights like Sikaron. But Ballation has a 100% chance to remove one buff from your enemy. With having Turn the Blade from Paragon, that pretty much is at the moment is a 1 second GCD purge. You do have to be within the 23 meters, though. In PvP, they're whining about this because a BM can just purge the whole enemy team if they're allowed to live long enough. PvP are a bunch of whiners, though, and they really can't adapt to different strategies of actually, hey, target the 10 BM and kill it before it gets into range with their 35 meter range. I have to run 11 more meters to be able to purge them. So just watch out for that. That is a change that they're talking about, changing the purge on this. So it just might affect fights that a BM is used for, depending on how they change it. Or if you use BM in PvP, would kind of maybe change that too. So, on that, do have a charge, Thread the Trees, of course the Enrage. Main other things, though, that you want on your bar other than the macro is Soul Sickness, Cutting Slash, Brutal Strike, and Tearing Slash. Tearing Slash and Brutal Strike are your finishers. I'll just kind of go over them right now. again, like, Thread the Trees, we take that. A couple buffs from Paragon. But really, like, you don't really use anything in Paragon. Beastmaster has a couple ranged abilities, but not much. What it ends up being is 23-meter range. But you don't have any finishers other than your Brutal Strike, which is a ranged finisher. But Ravaging Strike is a 30 meters instead of 23 meters, so I do have that, as I said, in the macros after Fierce Strike. So if you're farther than 23 meters, you'll start using Ravaging Strike instead of Fierce Strike. They do the same amount of damage, so that's good at least. One's 30 meters, one is the 23. The only thing from Reaver you take out is your Soul Sickness for the God, of course. Just now kind of go over this. So we have our utility, your CC, your debuff, Spotter's Call, but don't keep using that. Bard will get mad at you, or the Oracle. You have your other buffs. You have 5-minute cooldown. These are all 5-minute debuffs. They say it's 2-minute cooldown, but they're 5-minute debuffs, just like Flaring Power, so you gotta watch out for that. Enrage is, you want that up as often as possible too. That's a 1-minute CD. Depending on the fights, you want to time it to give your biggest boost, like Flaring, Orchestra, Versajoy, Wild Growth, and Enrage all at once is very powerful. Got your Primal Lucidity, which is just in the spam macro for the 58. I have the heal on my bar. That's mainly more used in PvP than PvE. Okay, so Vicious Opportunity is no GCD, cooldown is 6 seconds though. Does a little bit of damage, does a little bit of bleed, but it's used after the warrior's pet critically hits. So it's a reactive ability. Just to kind of show it's at the end of the macro because it's not on that GCD, so you can pretty much just spam this macro, and Vicious Opportunity, when your pet crits, you will be able to use that ability. As I said, the two finishers, Brutal Strike and Tearing Slash. Tearing Slash does damage per attack points and then a bleed over additional another 27 seconds. So it is another damage over time. So you want to, I track this with the K alert, and you want to make sure you refresh it after it falls off. Brutal Strike, on the other part though, deals 30% more damage for each dot on the target, up to 150%. So up to 5 different dots. If you have 5 dots on your target, it will do the most damage that it can. So you want to keep your dots up as often as possible. You don't want some to fall off. I'll get into which one you definitely don't want to fall off. But Brutal Strike does do more damage the more dots there are. Kind of just going over Messy Wounds, as I said, is in the first line of the debuffs, or of your macro. Just cause every 30 seconds, it's up for 30 seconds. This causes the enemy to take an additional 15% damage from you for the 30 seconds, and there's no GCD. So you want that up as often as possible. Obviously, target switching, it won't be up because cooldown is 30 seconds and it lasts for 30 seconds. We then have Cunning Ruse in the next line. This is a cooldown of 15 seconds, deals some physical damage, and also in addition increases the damage done by the Beastmaster and Primal, your pet, by 4% per damage over time on the enemy up to 5. So obviously this you'd want to use after you get some damage over times going. Um, I'll show you in a second here what that pretty much means to do. After this, we have the Cunning Ruse. Oh, sorry. Messy Wounds, Cunning Wounds, then Twin Cuts. Twin Cuts, 15-second cooldown, does some damage, but then it bleeds damage as well. And then bleeds from one wound, 7295 health over 27 seconds, and then from another bleed, another one for the same amount of damage and time. After Twin Cuts, we've got the Primal Lucidity, which 10-second GCD up for 6 seconds, does some damage, reduce cast time for some party members. Then after that, we have our Vicious Blow. Vicious Blow is your spam attack other than Fierce Strike. Deals damage, but it deals 15% more damage per dot effect on the enemy, up to 75%. So again, you want a lot of your dots up, and then you want to keep your dots up so that your Vicious Blow and your Brutal Strike will do the most damage possible. After the Vicious Blow, we have our Fair Strike, which, as I said, is the spammable ranged, well, up to 23 meter ranged ability, which does Purge. It does less damage, of course, than Vicious Blow when you have all the dots up. If you have no dots, though, it will deal more than the Vicious Blow, of course. So after Vicious Blow is, of course, the Fair Strike for ranged, disconnects, that sort of thing, to deal some damage. After that, though, we do have our Flesh Rip, but it is a no global cooldown, 6-second cooldown, though, so it's off the GCD. Deals some damage and then doesn't bleed over the 27th. Must be used after the warrior's pet critically hits. So there's two abilities that are off GCD that do either additional damage or applies a bleed. That has to happen after your pet critically hits. So that is why they're at the bottom of the thing, is they're off the GCD. Now when you do have a pet, you can check. Your pet gets better scaling of crit power, so it's at the max crit power at 2884. Obviously, well, or even before that, because I have 2884. But that is the hard cap, 50%. It's Fizz crit. Right now, as you can see, it's 29.85, 2385 plus 6. Let's see what mine is. Mine is 24.3 plus 3. So your pet does have a little bit better crit chance than you do yourself. Of course, also from some of that Paragon is that we end up with a little bit more chance to crit by 15%. So, if I spell Kaler right? So, main thing is, I pretty much track your five dots easily here. You might have a little bit more that do apply a dot part, but these are your main dots for the most part. Your Soul Sickness, your One Finisher, your Cutting Slash, and so on. Of course, I didn't get into Cutting Slash with the abilities. So, all of these are in a macro. Cutting Slash, again, is a spammable ability. Does very little damage, but it does apply a bleed, which can be stacked up to 3 times. So, we'll just kind of go into here at the moment. You might want to hit your Messy Wounds first. And then, like, at the moment I have that 3 points for Tearing Slash. So, Tearing Slash 1, 2, 3, and then you start putting into other leads in. That's what pretty much then you just make sure that refresh your leads as much as possible. The main thing is that you don't want to solve all the leads that come and slip to the flash because it has the stacks. So if there's any chance that it's awesome, maybe away from you, you want to apply it early. Otherwise, you want to apply it at 2 lead, so that way you maximize. Pretty much, just ban that, watch your cooldowns, and well, gods, mostly one leads, except for the soul sixes. Main PvP soul sixes are more about standard cleanse off as well. But, for the most part, that's what keep up your moves and off cooldowns, get your leads, and just go to town as much as possible. So that's pretty much how BM plays, is those abilities, get your finishers up, and all that sort of stuff. Hope you have fun with BM. It is a very helpful spec for a lot of things, and I'll see you next time.